Well, this is something different for me from the home Western Independent series I've been recording, guys. I'm interviewing somebody, and I was really actually thrilled when he reached out, sent me an email, and then I got to have a look through the videos he's already been putting out there. We've been talking about youth in the independence movement. It seems all us old fellows are talking about it all the time, but we don't talk to the youth people who are trying to get involved. So it was great to see Hirad Ranjbar here reaching out and doing videos because I think it's more important for us to listen to the younger people getting involved rather than talk at them. I think that's half of what our problem is. So thanks for coming on to talk to me tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Corey.
So I guess just to start with, I mean, we'll go into why you felt drawn to independence itself, but what made you, I guess, feel drawn then to start becoming public, making videos and putting out your perspective on it?
Yeah, I'm a post-election independence advocate. I guess, my political backgrounds, like I guess started when I was 12, as like most young men with a internet access do these days. And yeah, I oscillated a lot, between left and right. And as my views sort of like, I guess, solidified a bit more. Um, Yeah, like especially in regards with like how my parents they're both engineers in the oil and gas industry, and just sort of like seeing the boom and bust cycle play out in like 2015, for example, when Notley came in, and then later with the UCP. I know it wasn't the NDP that, the market conditions were definitely a bit hampered back then, regardless of their havoc. But yeah, it really like set like a deep seed in me, right? The more I learned about like how much this particular industry, whether it be, oil or natural gas, like the amount of wealth that it generates and just the amount that's plundered and how much it's demonized out east, right? And how much it's hampered out east, right? For example, Quebec has always been blocking, major energy infrastructure projects, even though, um, you know, we like make so much of the contributions that goes towards Quebec through equalization and not just that, I guess, towards Canada as a whole through CPP and all the other taxes that we pay and the little transfer we get. And so, yeah, I guess, yeah, I was speaking to my dad, before the election, and he was like a sort of, I guess, like conditional, like 51st stater, I would call him. Like he was like, well, worst case scenario, Carney gets in, Alberta joins the 51st state or whatever. And I was like vehemently against that at the time. I was sort of like a little bit high on like Canada Pride. This was during like the peak of like the Trump tariff hysteria. So yeah, I just couldn't ever, yeah, imagine Alberta becoming a U.S. state. And I still don't. I still advocate for independence. Yeah, I'm not a 51st stater or anything. But then when the election happened and you just like all the Eastern complacency and like what the status quo sets in and just the fact that elections are essentially just decided, in Ontario and Quebec, right? I remember CTV like I think it was only like around like I don't remember exactly, only like 60 or 70 ridings had been given in favor of the Liberals, had already um, predicted like a liberal government outcome, which was crazy to me. Like watching it live, I was like, how could that be, right? Like in my feeble mind, I was thinking, what? The votes in Alberta haven't even been counted yet because of the time zone difference and whatnot. But yeah, and then later on, I did some reading, and then I realized that, like, yeah, not only is has Western, like, I guess, alienation and grievance been like such a long-standing thing. It's also that there's like an actual like organized party or not party, not like political party, but like an major like nonprofit organization, the Alberta Prosperity Project that's like spearheading it, right? And that sort of like I guess I don't want to say like made me felt like feel safe in my views, but it definitely made me like become more expressive, right? Like once you know that there like a base exists for, these kinds of views, like you're more open to like what I did, start making videos and posting, shorts and stuff on TikTok and Instagram. And so yeah, I guess, Yeah, it's been like a very like I guess very wild but very quick journey, right? I had Michael Wagner on,
Hmm.
and I've read through some of his books, and like just the amount of like I don't know, like if I can't read them at night anymore, like before bed, like it kind of gets your blood boiling to a certain point.
Yeah, Michael gives a great background on why independence is so
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah. And then yeah, just and what's really been like what's really struck me odd recently and something that I've always been thinking about like for the past couple of days is, like the separatist sentiment in Quebec has always been around and they're extremely organized and like well connected, right? Like they have 22 seats, in the House. And no one ever calls them traitors or, you know, um I guess they don't ever have to face consequences for being outspoken about what they are, and it should be that way, right? And this sort of hypocrisy, ties back into basically everything else, like in regards to, yeah, how Alberta's been like treated, like in terms of economics. And yeah, it's just like very much like in parallel to that. And what's also really concerned me now is like, I guess, yeah, I think most people, once they sort of get tied into the movement, it's because of the economic ramifications. But mostly now I see like the trajectory of Canada, even like post-COVID, is headed towards like so much authoritarianism and censorship. And yeah, it's just like, and again, the major voting blocs are all completely complacent on this, right? They, I guess, have like a vendetta against a conservative ever coming into power, or maybe they were, I don't know, like hoodwinked by Carney's resume or whatnot. But yeah, I just think that like things truly will never change, unless Alberta, secures, I like to say secures its right to self-determination. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're grounded in the rationale as to why most people are looking at the independence option and moving towards it. But the difference with you is, of course, you're hitting these conclusions much earlier than most people. There's people like me, Michael Wagner, others who, yeah, we started in politics in our teens as well, but we were the exceptions. I mean, we used to sit in rooms full of people twice or three times our age, and it hasn't changed much. If you watch the APP, it's great what they've been doing. They've been organizing, but you see Dennis and Mitch and Jeff up on the stage, and they're almost caricatures of just kind of the older angry men, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm an older angry man myself, but it does
Yeah.
limit the growth, and we're
Mm.
seeing an appetite among youth. But I don't know
Yeah.
if the organization is building something that's appealing to draw the youth in. That's what I'm really interested in. Is what do you feel then? The energy's out there, but how can the movement tap into younger people? We always talk about it, but we don't seem to ever really do anything about it.
Yeah. So what I've been doing personally is I've been doing short form content
Hmm.
more so. Like actually, like I think about like 4 days ago, I started a TikTok. So there's this like trend going on where like these Family Guy characters, Peter Griffin and Stewie basically are wearing like different costumes and they're talking to each other. And like in the background of these videos, it's like a gameplay of whatever game. It's like it falls under like the umbrella of like brain rot. And this sort of content is very like heavily geared towards Gen Z. And
Okay.
it's what's interesting is it like very educational. There's ones that do it like there's like a finance guy, Peter Griffin. There's like a I don't know, like a there's one like a legal Peter Griffin that like teaches you how to do like legal like tax avoidance. There's like a anti-Zionist Peter Griffin. There's just so many different things. And I tapped into that recently. And I did like an Independence Peter Griffin where, he's has a Alberta shirt on and he
Yeah.
basically has this back and forth with the other characters. And I think yeah, the second video I posted got like 20,000 views. And it definitely garnered like a lot of traction, especially since it was like a very new account. So I can hope on to build more onto that. But I guess the mo more like broad thing that APP could do, is that like it needs to become like more nonpartisan, I feel, right? Like they do claim that they are like a nonpartisan organization, and I think at heart I do believe that, but like once you go into their events, you sort of like notice that okay, like if say like an outsider was was just dropped into this pool, like they'd freeze all like it's very much like if you're sort of already independence minded and like already like on the right wing, maybe even on the fringes of the right wing, right? Like they like to talk a lot about COVID and Freedom Convoy, which is fine. Like those were like suspensions of like liberty, that were like unparalleled in Canadian history, right? But like yeah, like the language and like I guess the tone and yeah, like the talking points, a lot of that is used, and like I guess the values that they portray, it might not jive well with, like I guess most young people. I know it resonates with me personally, but there's a lot of like ways to, I guess, sort of um like make the rationale like and like frame it as being like more like nonpartisan, right? That like, hey, if you want like better social services even or, better infrastructure, less hospital wait times, right? Maybe like childcare even, right? I guess this is more pandering to like the more like progressive side, right? Those will all like be made possible or bet more possible, I should say, once we stop this like major extraction of wealth from Alberta. And I'm sure you've already been to the APP events. Yeah, I don't know like how you feel about like how whether they're very squarely partisan or not.
Well, yeah, the partisan aspect. I mean, I think the movement has to evolve. The lower hanging fruit for us in pushing for independence. I'm not a member of the APP, but I've been supportive of them. I've spoken at many of their events, and it's easy to take shots at Carney and to be angry and point out the offenses that have happened to us, or even go after Naheed Nenshi. But something I've tried to cover in my videos, we got to be moving towards something, though. We know the negative. If the person's already in the room, they're there,
Hmm.
they know the negative. We got to point towards the positive. I'm interpreting and garnering, maybe that's a little bit of what you're speaking of. Like, and we kind of got different goals. Those of us are getting gray haired up there. We're thinking of pensions and retirement and moving ahead, maybe leaving something better for our younger
Hmm.
generation. But the younger generation is wanting to make sure they
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
have the social safety nets and things moving forward.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I guess you're saying, just present things a little more on the benefits rather than the negatives, or is it along those lines? I mean, I think a lot of people look at social services as a
Yeah,
benefit
for
to
sure.
them.
Yeah, just yeah, and like I think, most like even if you're like on the more libertarian side of things, I think a lot of people on, that like aisle would be somewhat complacent with well, lower level taxation, not the current level. I would rephrase.
Hmm.
If the government services and social services that were being provided were actually efficient, right? Like what's currently happening, like, and they're not having all these like administration bloat, like what's happened with the AHS, and now we have the the charter medical centers that have actually like very like improved on surgical wait times and whatnot. And yeah, I think like yeah, like yeah, I've heard that in a lot of your videos where, you build towards independence rather than like I guess break up Canada, so to speak. And yeah, and I guess yeah, it's definitely fine and they should do that, like holding Carney's feet to the fire sort of thing. But yeah, like the tone is like very exacerbated from like what I've gathered at their events. Like it's more than fine to bring up like all the transgressions against Alberta, whether it was the last 10 years or the last 50 years, and, frame them, as like a bad thing. But I think maybe like, I don't know how to explain this. Maybe like portraying Alberta not as like I don't know, this might sound weird, but like putting it in people's heads that, like we're the victims, right? Because, like this sort of like, I guess, victimization game gets played by both sides, right?
Yeah, and it's
And
tiresome.
I think if you were to, yeah, it is, yeah, for sure. But if you were to play that game, you would have to like, like the figures, right? Just like the sh sheer like quantitative data and everything, is on Alberta's side, especially with what happened with the NEP and the national, yeah. Yeah, the NEP, sorry, I already mentioned
Yeah.
that. And then other like unconstitutional changes like Bill C-69. And I also think another thing is that that they that I did like what the NEP did, or sorry, what the APP did was touching on like the sort of like importance of like time and like how quickly we may want to move towards this, right? Like for example, the deals that the US made with Japan and Germany, like on natural gas, something like $700.5 billion, right? Even though those countries originally came on, knocking on Canada's door and like wanted Alberta's natural gas as it was, like less costly getting it off the coast of BC. And so that's like massive like opportunity cost, right? Like even if nothing gets worse and everything stays the same, even like a little bit better. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like like within the confines of Confederation, like we're just lo like I guess we're losing opportunity and prosperity and like money and time.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah, I don't know. Maybe like that sense of urgency might put some people like on edge, or maybe they wouldn't like it. They think that it'd be too rushed. Um, But yeah, like what you said, like the sort of like, yeah, just building on to things. And I'm speaking about the APP's like rhetoric, and because I was actually at an event yesterday at Edmonton. They had one on the 12th. And there was actually like a surprising amount of like young people. The first one I went to was in Fort Saskatchewan, and it was like maybe two other like youngsters there.
mm,
But like yeah, I saw like more people like in their like early to mid 30s and some even like in their 20s even. So yeah, that was very interesting. I think it is slowly, you know, getting into the heads of the youth. But
yeah.
yeah, there's still a lot to be done.
Well, I think maybe we've got to move away from some of the, we're not move away from, but realize that we need different platforms to reach the younger people. Like the model the APP is using is still much like the old Reform Party did in the 80s and 90s, which was really effective. But I remember at a meeting in Edmonton, somebody had asked about that. I
Mm,
was at a rebel meeting I was speaking at, and Sheila Gunn Reid said, actually, because they'd asked about youth coming out, she said, "Well, my daughter is strongly supportive of this sort of thing, but she doesn't want to be here tonight.
mm,
She's supportive of it, but she's a girl in her late teens, early 20s. I'm not sure what Sheila's daughter's age is. She'd rather be anywhere else, but she doesn't mean she's not supportive. This just isn't the format she's terribly interested in. It was interesting hearing you talk
yeah.
about you using different TikTok things that people my age just we aren't going to know about or get
Mm,
into. So if we can broaden the ways we're reaching out to people, I guess we can reach those most
yeah.
concerned younger people.
Yeah, and I guess yeah, like what you said about talking to young people, a big part of you know like building that support through different platforms, just like finding people that are already like well versed in them rather than like trying to foray into them like on your own. And yeah, there's certainly a lot. I know of like a lot of YouTubers, like conservative, like Canadian YouTubers, not even necessarily from Alberta, that have been covering this movement. And it's not, short form content. Maybe like their viewership is like, I don't know, maybe from like mid 20s to mid 30s or whatever their demographic is. But yeah, like the videos that I mentioned, I just checked today, like 47% of the viewership is from 18 to 24-year-olds. And then the next bracket is 24 to 35, and that's like 30 something percent. So like a VAT, which is something that I'm very like, like proud of proud of basically, like being able to shout to, like that specific demographic. And yeah, I think, there's people that have like degrees in these kinds of things, social media and whatnot. Um, and like, they may be able to tap into it better than anyone else. But yeah, like what other like ideas did you personally have about like better youth outreach?
I don't have a lot, and that's why I was excited to talk to you. I was just even hearing that alone, listening to the demographics that you saw, and it's a complete contrast when I look at my YouTube demographics. Where's my average listeners, which
Hmm.
I guess makes sense, are people 40 to 60. So I guess people tune in to people on their own level.
Mm,
But it's also on different platforms. I mean, Facebook is the old person's platform now. I mean, it still
yeah,
reaches millions of people, but young people aren't on
yeah,
there so much. So I guess we've just got to utilize those other platforms to get out to people, but we can't force ourselves. I would look awkward trying to bother with TikTok. It's just not my thing. I'm aged out, but I can still reach people effectively on my
Yeah.
own. So it's just good to hear that you have been resonating through the different channels you've been hitting, and still seeing more coming out to the meetings. I mean, part of it's just
Mm.
comfort in numbers. If you get there and you're not the only young person in the whole room, it feels a little less uncomfortable, and you're more inclined to come to another one. Because if we're going to win a referendum,
Yeah.
we need
Yeah,
every
definitely.
age. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Especially, in Alberta where like I think we have like the highest like level of like interprovincial immigration into Alberta, like
mhm,
specifically like the younger like working age demographic. Yeah, we definitely need to tap into more of those people. And another thing I've been thinking of that the APP can do, this is like a sort of like format thing where they do have like a list of, most commonly asked questions,
mhm,
but maybe like something that's like more concise and like a drop down menu with like say like 20 or so, maybe even more questions, and you hover over it
mhm.
and you sort of like see basically like a concise answer with like all the sources and footnotes and everything. Um, yeah, I do want to talk to them about that, but like something, I guess, like in today's world, you sort of have to like make your points very quickly, right? Like you have to jump to the point straight away, especially like with the current like attention spans and just the way that the beast is, like in just the amount of viewership that um like short form content garners.
Mhm.
And I think like the quicker like we deliver like a lot of these yeah, like like in format or more concisely, like deliver all of these talking points and like myth busting this sort of thing to people, in whatever platform that may be. This is like a broad thing. Is it? Yeah, it'll definitely garner more attention.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely have to get on and see that Peter Griffin stuff. I mean, I'm a Family Guy fan, but I haven't looked at the new versions of using it to get other messages across. That's interesting stuff. So
Yeah.
lots to work on. We've kind of getting on in time in this already for kind of the format I do here. But you've been doing other stuff. As you said, you were speaking to the candidate with the Libertarian Party, and you're doing some other work.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess my longer form content and like interviews and podcasts I do on the Alberta project. It's called this to my credit, I guess like I hadn't even heard of the APP like and like that acronym or the name before I picked the name for my channel. I was like thinking of like the Alberta project as like a nation building project, right? Like you're creating
Yeah.
this this sovereign nation. And yeah, I've been interviewing like all sorts of people. Like my latest I just recorded a podcast with a libertarian candidate in Battle River Crowfoot, Michael Harris. Yeah, I'm not sure when you'll be uploading this, but I haven't still uploaded that video on my end. But it's very interesting just to like hear him talk, right? I think what's been like interesting about that writing is the second most like well-known candidate, so to speak, Bonnie Critchley, she like most of her fans don't even live in Battle River Crowfoot, which, like most of her supporters. They're usually like elbows up sort of liberals that just don't like Polyev,
Yeah.
which it's fine, but like but what Michael gives an insight into the writing itself and the different parts, like Camrose is more progressive leaning, but then the surrounding areas and towns and villages, they're definitely on board with a lot of things. And I even asked him about the like separatist sentiment in Battle River Crowfoot, which again, like those rural areas are pretty high in. And yeah, and I guess I will be posting that pretty soon. And I've also done interviews with Michael Wagner. I got Dennis Modry's contact info. Hopefully I'll have him on soon. And the latest that I've uploaded right now is just with another young person that I actually met at the Fort Saskatchewan Town Hall in APP. So yeah, if you'd like, like generally more fresh perspectives, yeah, definitely check it out.
Awesome. So, I mean, just before I close off, the Alberta Project on YouTube, you've got an Instagram accounts, TikTok. Which other areas can people find you at?
Yeah, so the handle was the Alberta Project, like as a handle was taken on Instagram, so it's just called Alberta Project
Okay.
on Instagram. Yeah, that's where I do like all like short form content, but it's like a bit different. I started this like a couple months ago. Basically around the same time I started my channel. And on TikTok, I'm running an account right now, which we talked about earlier. It's called independence.peter. And you can basically check it out. It's like a sort of like humorous, short form content where, Peter Griffin and Stewie Griffin are like talking each other about independence. Usually Stewie starts off with he throws like a hammer in the wrench. He's like, oh, Peter thinks that the Alberta government directly sends a check to Quebec every year, and then Peter comes in and like corrects him and basically walks through like basically like rapid fire through all the talking points and like all the mantras like surrounding whatever topic the short is about. So yeah, and I've been trying to inject more humor into that. And yeah, that's where I am on TikTok.
Right on. I'll have to check it out. All right. Well, thanks for taking some time on a Wednesday night. I'll probably get this up
Yeah, for
tonight,
sure.
actually. So just one more note to anybody watching. Tomorrow, the court decision should come through whether or not that referendum question's accepted, and the petitioning might begin pretty
Oh yeah,
soon.
that's tomorrow, right?
Yeah. So
Mm,
things might be changing on the front, and the clock might start ticking. We'll see. And we're gonna need to be firing those
yeah.
guns on every front. So it's great seeing again. Yeah.
Yeah, and if that comes through, and if you live in Edmonton Whitemud by chance, make sure to like contact me on Instagram or whatever, because we do need volunteers. I'm doing like the regional leader role at the APP for that riding. So yeah, definitely reach out.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll be talking again sometime soon. So thanks again, and
Yeah,
we'll
for
see
sure.
you on the next one. Right on.
Yeah, for